start by telling us, essentially like when and where you were born and about your parents?
Yes, I was born in Chicago, Illinois, and my father had the same name, and I was not a junior, but my name was Donald Ferguson Reid at birth, and then when I went to be baptized, I was told that I would have to change my name to the name of a saint in order to have a proper Catholic confirmation, and so my name was changed to Francis. But at the first opportunity that I had, I went back to Donald Ferguson. So that's the name that I had in joining the Marine Corps. But I was educated in mainly Catholic schools in the Chicago area, and all of those schools are solidly Catholic. Mother of Sorrows, Queen of Angels, Our Lady of Lourdes. These were all the names of the schools that I attended, and my mother was left with two children when my father passed away. My father was a veteran of the First World War, and he had been wounded in that war, and he was gassed, and he suffered the results of that, and he died at a very early age. He had just turned 40, and so my mother was left with the two children to support, and she did a absolutely wonderful job. And I had one sister, 15 months older than me, and she was a beautiful woman, and she later went on and became involved with the Miss America pageant, and she was in Atlantic City, New Jersey. So she was a fine scholar, and not only beautiful, but a fine parent. And she had 4 children, and those 4 children, one of whom passed on, but the 3 are doing well. And the one child I just visited May last week, and they have 2 children, one of whom is at the University of Virginia, sophomore, and another is at the William and Mary, the second oldest university in the United States. So, but going back to my experience in going to school, I attended grammar school in Chicago, and after I graduated from grammar school, we went to my mother, my sister, and I moved to Atlantic City, New Jersey, and it was in that location that was immediately following my father's passing, and my mother continued to be involved. Right, and I'm in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and we had gone there during the summer time for a couple of years. My mother's background was from the Philadelphia area, and her family used to go to Atlantic City, and they had property there, and that's where we lived when I was going to high school, and my sister was going there as well. But as I had earlier stated, my sister was a real scholar, and she graduated. I think she was number 2 in her class, and she had a scholarship to high school and or to college, and she went to Our Lady of Good Counsel College. And when I graduated from high school, the same high school, Holy Spirit High School, I had the the opportunity to go to college, but I knew it was too much for my mother to have two children in college and to do that at the same time. So it seemed to me very appropriate to do, I joined the Marine Corps, and I recall my mother saying, she knew I was going to go into the service, and but she didn't attempt to influence me in any way. And so when I came back from enlisting, she said, which outfit did you join? And I told her I joined the Marine Corps, and she said, your father would turn over in his grave. She said he didn't care for Marines at all. And he was Army, and so he was not in favor of Marines, and which was not unusual for the Army. The Army really.
Why did you choose the Marines then?
I chose the Marines because they were the most formidable, the bravest, and they really were to be admired by everyone. Interestingly enough, there were in our graduating class, I think there were 101 in high school, and of those 101, I think 51 were girls and 50 were boys. But of those 50, 9 joined the Marine Corps, and not all at the same time, but over a period of about a year or two. And many of us went over to and fought during the Korean War, and a couple of them passed on, were killed in action. And but it was really seen as entirely appropriate and good that we all joined the Marine Corps.
So what year was this roughly?
This was 1950, early 51, and that's when I entered the Marine Corps. And I joined the Marine Corps in February. And as a matter of fact, I entered the Marine Corps on the same day that they raised the flag on Mount Suribachi, 6 years following the flag raising. And the time was a very pressed time for the Marine Corps, because they were being called to force the situation over in Korea, and they needed to have assistance of those who were fighting the war. And the war was underway. The chief offensive operations had already occurred. By the time I arrived there, I arrived there 6 months to the date of my enlistment in the Marine Corps, and I was on the front line in Korea. By coincidence, I was a machine gunner, although I had been trained in special weapons as a flamethrower or a mortarman or bazooka or a machine gun. And when I got to Korea, I found out I was in the heavy machine gun section.
Was this like training on the spot then?
Oh yeah. Well, we jumped off the next day when I was on the front line, and we fought with with great intensity, and that was the last major offensive of the Korean War in the Punch Bowl, and our outfit sustained heavy casualties during the first 5 weeks that I was there, and we were taking several of those hills, and the outcome was favorable for the Marine Corps. As a matter of fact, we never lost. Every battle that we were in, we won, and so there was never any hesitancy with reference to committing ourselves to combat, and we were ready to do that all the time. And it was only after I had served for over a year that and we had moved over to in front of Seoul, and that's where the peace negotiations were really proceeding, and I served at the front and during that period. And it was in September of 1951, after serving 13 months, 17 days, and from my departure to my arrival back in the United States, and I arrived here in San Francisco after serving that period of time, and I had 3 battle stars, and we fought many engagements with the enemy, and we did so with real zeal and commitment, and there was never any doubt in our mind that we were the best troops in the world, and we could do anything we wanted to with success in our eyes. So there was never any hesitancy in that regard, and so I was very, very proud to serve in those ranks. And with reference to individual situations that I was involved in, there were a number of trying situations that I was involved in, and I was never wounded, although many of my fellow Marines suffered injuries, and some of them lost their lives, and it was there were major battles that we were involved in. But I'll say this without hesitancy: the Marines fought with great bravery and commitment, and so I'm very, very proud, to indicate that I served in the Marine Corps. So after I returned, I was here in the Bay Area for about 5 days. We were inoculated and given different treatments, and afterwards we were released, and we were given the opportunity to go back home for 30 days, and which I did, and I took the railroad train back to Chicago and visited persons that I knew there from my time previously, and then I went from there back to New Jersey, and where I spent my 30 days liberty, and I had the wonderful opportunity to go to be stationed at the Naval Ammunition Depot at Earl, New Jersey, and this was really a singular accomplishment, and it was the tremendous good fortune, because most of the individuals that I had gone into and that I served with went back to and were stationed at Camp Lejeune, and as a result, they were far away from home. But here I was nearby where I lived, and I wanted to go to New York, and I had the opportunity. I asked my sister what schools I should go to, or I should think about, and my mother had indicated that I should go to a Catholic university, and for that reason I limited my selection to Catholic universities. But even I achieved acceptance at St. John's University. My sister indicated that I ought to give consideration to Fordham, Manhattan, or St. John's, and I chose to go to St. John's. One of the factors was that they had females at St. John's, and I was influenced by that, and also I knew I was going to be working during that period, but I wanted to go to school and really enjoy the whole idea of going to college, so which I did, and I really spent 4 glorious years in the undergraduate level at St. John's, and it was really a splendid opportunity to go to school in New York, and I would spend my summers down in Atlantic City, and where I was selling ice cream on the beach in Atlantic City, and making a lot of money to take me through my freshman, sophomore, and junior and senior year in college. Yeah.
What did you study?
Oh, in business, but actually, I went to St. John's to be interviewed because I had been accepted in the Arts and Sciences division of the university. But I recall meeting with the dean, and it was her, the dean. I recall her name as being Sullivan, and she had a practice where she interviewed all of the candidates who were going to be accepted and attend their Arts and Sciences division. And I was in dress blues at the time, and we had participated in a competition for the best color guard. We won that, as a matter of fact. But I was interviewed by the dean, Dean Sullivan, and she interviewed me. And after interviewing me, she said, the record at St. John's in Arts and Sciences is not very good with regard to veterans, and I was surprised at that. But she said, I think she meant by that, what the facts were. It seemed that the attendees at the Arts and Sciences division were superior students, and they were really the most excellent students that were going to go to the university. And for that reason, they had a certain pride in having that and holding to that level of accomplishment. So, and I recognized, that what she was saying, and I said, "What would you suggest?" And she said, "Well, because of your interest in finances, I think that it would be best if you go to the business school." And I said, "Thank you very much." And I went down and I said, "Where's the business school?" And she says, "It's in the same building, but it was down a few floors." And so I went there, and I enrolled there, and really that was the best choice under the circumstances. And I really owe her a debt of gratitude, because that was certainly the best thing to do. Whereas had I gone to Arts and Sciences, I would have probably ended up a history teacher, and not a very great accomplishments that I have achieved through the business. But the an irony here is really that I became a member of a fraternity at St. John's, Phi Delta Phi, and what happened is that we competed in all of the different sports, and also we appeared in debating, and so I was the head of our debating team, and we participated in university-wide competition, and it ended up that we were competing against the best, other than we won the best in the College of Business Administration, but then we went on and we faced the Arts and Sciences division of the university for the championship, and we debated them, and they didn't show up for the debate, so we won that. I don't, but we nonetheless we debated them. So, but it was a great success, and I then was admitted to the law school at St. John's, and I completed undergraduate in 4 years, but I had another a year under the GI Bill, which I took, and then went to law school at night, and graduated in 4 years from the law school. And the law school at that time was an outstanding institution, and has only become immensely better since my departure. But it's really an outstanding success, and it's a university that really represents the New York idea of enabling youngsters who are seeking to gain favor and business accomplishment, to give them the opportunity to do so. And I really admire that. But that's the whole idea behind the Vincentian idea of education, to enable those who are in need to have the opportunity to attend school and to improve their lives. And that is the guiding principle that continues to motivate youngsters, and also to give them the opportunity to excel. And it's really extraordinary, the number of graduates who go on to achieve tremendous success as they have done over the years. It's really extraordinary. The school that I attended, we had 5,000 students. Today we have over 22,000, and we're doing tremendously well. And one of the really amazing things is the John the 23rd, the Pope at that time. He was he asked to have qualifications given by all the Catholic universities throughout the world to establish a graduate international program of scholars in the Vatican. And the Pope chose St. John's University of New York to have this graduate program. And today we have a graduate program in Paris and in Ireland, and also in the Vatican. So it's really extraordinary. But it's just one more example of how they motivate people in the right spirit, and they guide them in the right way. So I'm very, 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 very proud to have been a graduate of that university. I was granted the splendid good fortune of having a graduate degree from St. John's, an honorary doctorate degree as well from that university. So I have nothing but great pride, and I've supported them, and I continue to do that to this day. And it's really amazing because I then joined the Treasury Department after graduating from college, and moved all over the United States. I went to Washington, D.C., and then from there I was promoted, and I became the head of the district in the 12th National Bank region of the states of Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, and Alaska. And I had that jurisdiction for 3.5 years. And then I moved back and was promoted. And I became the head of the area, Delaware and Pennsylvania, which was the largest area in terms of assets for that Treasury Department, the Comptroller's Office.
Can you tell me what were your responsibilities? What did that job actually entail?
It entails examining financial institutions, and that was where so I examined the smallest to the largest banking institutions in the nation, from the First National Bank of Weebaugh, Montana, to the First National Bank in Chicago, in New York.
So you're just keeping them all honest.
Yes, that was my principal responsibility was, and to fashion out, identify misbehavior, and making sure that everything was squared away. And
So in law school, what did you emphasize, like financial law?
it was just basic business course, and it was all business undergraduate, and then it was all the law courses. There was no specialty in that, although one could take electives, but I don't recall anything being other than basic law. And but then when I went into banking, I had the opportunity to go into insurance as well, but I chose to go into banking, and then moved up quickly. And I served over 10 years in the comptroller's office, and I was given the opportunity, and I was hired by a bank in the West Coast. I always wanted to come out here to the West Coast, having been in combat training at Camp Pendleton. I said, this is where I want to be. And so when I had the opportunity, I was given the opportunity to run that trust department in Beverly Hills. And but that bank was taken over by Wells Fargo. And when that had occurred, I was given the opportunity to go into the legal department at Wells Fargo. And the only thing they required me to do is to move to San Francisco, which I did, and I really I hesitated somewhat, but after spending a little while here, I realized how wonderful this place was, and I fit right in. And
About what year was that?
that was about 1973. You know, and it was really a splendid opportunity. There was only one drawback, and that drawback was I really didn't have anyone. I didn't know anyone. And here I am, 40 years old, and in a different environment altogether. But I had a ranking position in the bank, and so I called back to St. John's, and I got a list of all the alumni here in the Bay Area, and I immediately had 300 friends that I could call, and I organized an alumni chapter here in the Bay Area, and we were quite successful in going out. And I also joined an organization that was the Seoul Sister City Committee, and also I joined the Marines Memorial Club. And
What was the Soul Sister City Committee? What did they do?
the Seoul Sister City, well, what they intended to do was to improve relations and make it more a guiding influence, a positive influence for opportunities to be in existence, to provide education and assistance of that nature. My wife was the president of that organization, and she had been identified by then Mayor Diane Feinstein to be the head of that committee, and I joined that committee, and that's how I met my wife, and she had earlier gone over to Seoul in Korea, and she had been invited to let them know, and she introduced the practices of how to improve hair styling and beauty care and that kind of thing. And my wife was quite an entrepreneur, and she was a wonderfully talented individual and very committed to be a success and she was one of the first women in that business, and one of the first to really excel in a business sense in that industry. And she was quite successful in not only establishing several salons, but also the beauty business and style and hairdressing, and also beauty care. And she was tremendously successful in that as well. So, and I met her through my associations with the city, and I was involved in many enterprises involving the city, and that's how I came to know Senator Feinstein. Well, now Senator Feinstein, and I've served on her committee, the Academic Review Board, for the military academies for the last 30 years, since she became a senator. So I rejoice in that undertaking, and there are a number of Marines serving in that capacity, as they have over the years. It's a splendid situation. It's most ironic. Just recently, I had the opportunity to review and interview one candidate who was really extraordinary, and I recall his essay being that, and he was a graduate of a Jesuit high school over in nearby Sacramento, I believe, and the name of the essay was "Let the Journey Begin," and so he was really motivated and a great youngster, and
You got in, right?
well, I read the essay, and I saw the name C. Turner Joy the Fifth, and C. Turner Joy was the name of the chief peace negotiator in Korea when I was there, and I was part of the Operation Snatch, and our mission. We would go out each day, stand behind a hill, and we would, in the event that there was any activity on the part of the North Koreans or the Chinese, we would rush in there with 6 tanks and 6 all-purpose carriers in order to rescue C. Turner Joy. That never came to pass, fortunately, because I don't think we would have been that successful. Because Panmunjom was actually about 7 miles into North Korea, so I don't know whether we would have succeeded in that regard. But given that we were Marines, I think we would have. Yeah. So, but it was an extraordinary circumstance that here I am interviewing his great-grandson. So,
But did he get in?
oh, yeah, he was number 1.
Oh.
There was no doubt. Well, he was a young man who could walk on water. He could do everything. But of course, when we're interviewing these candidates, these are really the cream of the crop. They are the best kids.
Just
You know.
what do you look for, just out of curiosity?
Well, we look for commitment, desire, knowledge, and really what it takes. And my chief focus is always on whether that person really understands what they're getting into, and whether they appreciate the fact, that being given the opportunity to go to a school of higher education, one of the best in the world, and that they're going to be expected to take on a great responsibility, a responsibility that's really a serious endeavor, and they have to realize, that it's a matter of life and death. And this is not a matter of just choosing an opportunity to go to school. this is a situation involving really life and death. When you look at the Korean War, for example, during that war, there were 135 medals of honor that were awarded. And of those 135, 95 about were given to the Army. And of those 95, about 80 of them were posthumously awarded. And then 4 were given to Air Force officers. And the remainder, some 47, were awarded to Marines and Navy. The Navy was awarded 7. And those were mostly, I think 6 of them were corpsmen, and the others were Marines. And those Marines and corpsmen represent 40% of the medals of honor that were awarded, which gives you some idea of exactly what it is you're being called upon to do in the service. So, and I think that's what I emphasize, in bringing to their attention, the fact that it's not only the qualifications that they're bringing in order to get into Annapolis, but also the commitment and what's expected of them when they take on that rank and privilege of serving in the Navy or Marine Corps.
Yeah, they can die.
They can. And so that really, our record in the Korean War was extraordinary. We went over there, General MacArthur had no troops to speak of that he could launch any kind of affirmative position where we would go forward and fight the enemy aggressively. But the Marines told him that they would send over a division. They arrived in Korea at Pusan in August 1950, and immediately set out to settle the situation there. The North Koreans had pushed us all the way back to a 35-mile perimeter around Pusan, and the situation was really bleak, and the opportunity was there for the North Koreans to push us out of that whole peninsula, but through the fire brigade, which we had landed with, which only constituted 1/3 of the 1st Marine Division. It consisted mostly of the 5th Marine Regiment, and they fought there for some 6 weeks, and it was a successful effort, by them to stop the communist aggression. But these troops were really that we were fighting were really quite skilled, and they had T-34 tanks, and they were well armed and well equipped, but they didn't constitute a superior enemy, but they were a forceful presence, and they were not to be taken lightly. General MacArthur then had the idea that he could go up and surround them or to control them by going to the north below right along Seoul, and the Marines landed at Incheon in September, and then after landing at Incheon, the 5th Marine Regiment and the 7th Marine Regiment and the 1st Marine Regiment combined, and then we took Seoul, and a couple of weeks later, and General MacArthur came over and met with Sigmund Rhee, and and they had taken Seoul, but there were still shots being fired outside that area, but we had taken that area. And then General MacArthur wanted us to go up in the Wonsan area on the other side of the coast, which we did, and the whole division was present when we moved up into the Chosin Reservoir, and that was an effort on the part of General MacArthur wanting to go up to the Yalu, but we moved east, west, when we from Wonsan and moved up into around 60 miles up into nearby the Chosin Reservoir, and we rescued an army outfit and we were then suddenly surprised by the Chinese hordes, and that was an incredible battle, and we moved the whole division. The whole division we moved out, and we took out not only the first Marine Division, but we took out all of our ammunition, all of our wounded, all of everything, and we moved out with dignity and pride, but it was really a tremendously devastating period of combat, and the number of instances of frozen feet and frozen situations, and the number of people who were awarded medals, and it was just an incredible battle. And we then went back to Hamnung and moved all the way out, and this is under fire, when in fact we're overmatched, probably as many as 10-1, and we were able to withdraw with dignity and righteousness, and we did the whole thing. And then when we were departing Hamnung, we took out 100,000 North Korean citizens, and can you believe that? And it really was, and then we set fire, and the Chinese had a mess on their hands when they retook that area, but we accomplished what we had to do, and it was later that I was present up into the Punch Bowl. We had come back, and General MacArthur again, put the Marines into the fight, and because simply the Army was not trained properly for this fight. They had gone through the Second World War, and I think their attitude was not really filled with fury, and the Marines were fighting a war. The Army was just fighting a holding pattern. So it was a different.
They weren't fighting to win. They were fighting so it didn't get worse.
That was it. They were just making sure that the situation was not getting worse. But the Marines have a purpose. They're fighters, and what they want to do is beat the people who are opposed to us, and who are trying to accomplish things that are not in the best interest of that which we seek. When you think about what we did during the Korean War, it is really extraordinary, and I recall, going through parts of Korea, and that nothing was still erect. The place, everything had been leveled. There was nothing standing, and in North Korea, it was devastating. There were more bombs dropped during the Korean War than during the whole of the Second World War in the South Pacific. it was extraordinary. and and to think that we accomplished what we have. And this year we're going to celebrate the 70th anniversary of the start of the war. And look, they have a 125-story building, the tallest building in the world, and sold. And the things that they've been able to accomplish, and here to be a part of something so glorious as the comeback to South Korea is just extraordinary by all terms. And we not only stopped communism for the first time, but we also secured the liberty and freedom of the people of South Korea.
Yeah.
And now South Korea is, 30 million, and North Korea is just a shadow. It's just terrible what's happening in North Korea.
A big fan of
Oh, no. He ought to learn a lesson of what's happened to the fellow from Pakistan or from Iran. He ought to be on his best behavior, and I think that it would be well served that they change exactly what they're doing. It's just deplorable, that we're having people lose their lives and suffer all of this injustice. It's really a terrible, terrible situation, and it's all being done by him, and it's all done by the military. But if the military is given the opportunity, they find it easier, and they find it it's not difficult for them to reap the benefits of privilege which they're given. But it's the same situation that's occurring now in Venezuela, where all of the military are being given all of these important slots, and as a result, nothing changes in the balance of power. So I think we're going to have to do something in order to to change that situation. You just can't allow this terrible behavior to continue to exist. It's wrong. It's wrong. It's not fair. It's not fair to the people that are being taken advantage of, and there's no real benefit being derived by the citizens of the country. So I'm in favor of what President Trump has done. I think he's a fine man in the sense of his values, and I think he's got the right idea, and he's fair, honest, and he wants to do well for everyone. I think it's splendid what he's doing. So that brings you up to date with regard to my feelings, concerning the war. But I intend to do more. But I really felt that it was a motivation in terms of recognizing how important that war was, and to bring attention to those who gave their lives and sacrificed their lives for the victory that we achieved. And when I went about doing this with John Stevens and Man Jae Kim, the three of us got it underway in 2009.
How did you meet John Stevens?
I met John probably one of the initial contacts that I had here in the Bay Area, and of course I got familiar with the Marines through the Marines Memorial Club, and I think I served on the board of the Marines Memorial Club before he did, but he was busily involved in business endeavors at that time that I met him, and I was involved in business with him as well. And he is a fine man, and I did nothing but admire him, and I had high admiration for him. And he had been, of course, in the Second World War, and but he had not been in a line company. But in Korea, he was really with the infantry. He was with the 1st Battalion, 5th Marine Regiment, and I was with the 3rd Battalion, 7th Marine Regiment. Altogether different outfit, but and we both were very proud of our respective regiments, but we have high admiration for the 5th Marine Regiments as much as the 7th Marine Regiment. And that's not to deny the 1st Marine Regiment, but we were all Marines. That was splendid. Yeah, yeah. But it was really an extraordinarily difficult challenge to build a war memorial in a sanctuary city, in a sanctuary state. I smile and chuckle.
You did have the one at Land's End for the USSM.
Yeah. Well, you have to recognize the fact that that had a lot more going for it than we did. The one in San Francisco, the USS San Francisco, not to diminish it at all, because that should be more celebrated. And I tried for years to relocate that memorial into some place where it could be more easily seen. You know, it's such a precious story, and it represents such a phenomenally successful effort by a local hero. And here's the fellow who went to high school here in San Francisco. He then went on to Annapolis, and then then he chose a career in the Navy, and he was a very close. He was on President Roosevelt's staff, but then President Roosevelt gave him his wish, which was to serve in the front at sea, which he did, and he went over and he was at the first naval battle at Guadalcanal, and that's where he lost his life, and that's where the ship displayed such courage.
Or one of the Pearl Harbor survivors we've interviewed, John Egan.
Oh, yeah, he was aboard.
Another Marine.
Yeah, he was aboard. Yeah, and I think he was injured there.
Yes.
Yeah, I know John Egan, and he's a fine Marine. Yeah, and there were only a handful of Marines aboard, but that was an extraordinary effort on our part. And but I've served on that board for years, and there were a number of situations where we attempted to do something a little bit different each year. And I remember the one year, several years ago, and I suggested that we bring a Japanese consul general to be a part of the celebration, and it didn't meet with any disrespect, but it wasn't everyone applauding. There was a certain hesitancy, but the fellow came out, and I knew him because I've served on the board of the San Francisco Host Committee and the Protocol Committee here of the city, and that's how I met him. So I knew him, and just that I asked him if he would be willing to do it, and he said yes. So So he was invited and he was on the program, and there was a certain hesitancy. And then what happened is he got up and spoke, and he gave a absolutely wonderful talk, and I mean, people were really splendidly affirmative, and it was really a great thing for him to do. Since that time, we've invited them routinely. So, but I think it's really wonderful, to have that
Well, I always
recognition.
enjoy going to the ceremony, and let's see, I guess for a while Hebert Holbrook, does that sound familiar?
Yeah,
Was involved, and then I guess Chief Johnny, he's another Pearl Harbor survivor, and Denny was there, wasn't he, at many of the San Francisco things, I'm thinking?
Denny Weisgerber?
Yeah, I think I saw him out there maybe. And
Yeah.
we just lost one of the guys who was always involved in the program, one of the Navy guys. Well, anyway, but yes, they always do a good job out there. Yes. Now, where did we leave off at? Are we ready to talk about his, are we still talking about the military?
Yeah, we're starting to talk about how they got the Korean War Memorial going.
Yeah, yeah. The way we got that started, it was just the three of us, but we contacted General Myatt at the Marines Memorial Club, and he suggested that we approach Pete McCloskey, former congressman, and Pete McCloskey I knew previously, and he accepted to the invitation to become the president of our foundation, and we then put together, and this was in '09, and we were successful in arranging for that group, and through my association with Charlotte Schultz, she was on the board of the Presidio Trust, and I knew Nancy Pelosi, and I also knew Bechtel, Cheryl Bechtel, and so it was through that combination, mainly Charlotte Schultz and Nancy Bechtel, and also through the assistance of Diane Feinstein, we were able to secure that site. And
Didn't they give you like a choice of 3 different places?
yes, they did, and we were given a choice of one of 4 sites,
4 sites.
and the only the one site was really comparable in terms of its location and beauty. It was really extraordinarily beautiful, even more beautiful than the site we have, but it was not accessible. And so we chose the one that we have now for the reason that it's right at the very center of everything. Nothing could be more beautiful
I think
than that.
it's pretty beautiful. It's hard to imagine the one you turned down.
The one we turned down was one with a beautiful view of the ocean, and it was just unobstructed. It was just extraordinary. It was just so beautiful, and it was you could see the sea cliff on the left. So it was really a beautiful one, but this far exceeds it in terms of its magnificence. So there's absolutely no doubt that was the best site. But there was only one person who was really key to success, and that was Charlotte Schultz. She was the person who really did it, and
She kind of gave you the green light on it.
well, she saw it, as being beneficial to the city, beneficial to relations between the countries, And so she gave her enthusiastic support. And she, of course, was close friends with Nancy Bechtel. And Nancy Bechtel was the president of the Presidio at the time. So that's how we got it. And, we can think otherwise, but that was it. Yeah. And so she's deserving of great praise, and deservedly. She did a great job. So
now you have the land, you just need enough money to.
yeah, we didn't have the money, but we were moving up, and there was discussion and about receiving money from Korea and the Republic of Korea. And so we approached them, and we were really dealing with them. And I went over to Korea with the head of the Seoul Sister City Committee, and we met with the mayor of Seoul, and I met with the mayor of Incheon, and other individuals, corporate heads, and the like. And it was at around the same time that we finally received the monies from them, $1 million. So that really took us all the way up. But there was a point there where really we had reached a point where we were not getting any large amounts of money, and I recall that's when I made a substantial contribution, and there was never any question in my mind that was going to be built, and we were going to build it, and it may be modified, but it was our intent to do that, and which we did.
So when it started out as an idea between the three of you, did you just kind of say, oh, let's do a memorial, or did you guys kind of like sit down and actually sketch out like ideas about how you would like it to look?
Oh yeah,
early
yeah.
on?
Oh yeah, we did. And as a matter of fact, we built a first cut in terms of what it might look like, and we brought that in here at 999 Green Street, and we put it in at the plaza level, and we put the first cut. Yeah, and Man J. Kim did that, and then we showed it to Charlotte, and we described this as being our objective. So, and she saw it, and it was not close to what we have now, but and as a matter of fact, the 40-foot wall, it's glorious. The way it is right now. But it's a far cry from what we had originally conceived as being a statue, being a statue of the Incheon landing. So it would have been a lot different from that which we have now. But the one we have now is more imposing. It's more splendid, and it's.
People can walk like into it and
Oh yeah.
be surrounded by it.
Yeah, you can add different entries. It's altogether superior, to just having
Big statue.
a statue.
Could you get a statue, maybe like a smaller one, and still install it somewhere there?
Yeah, well, things do not move quickly. Yeah, so when somebody has an idea, there are at least 14 ideas against it.
Yeah.
So, but we did accomplish what we wanted to, and it's beautiful in every sense. And to really go out there and see it at night is just glorious. Just to see the bridge there and to realize that this is the place that when I came back from Korea, I sailed right by there.
So, you guys in the end had to hire an actual designer?
Well, most of it was done. We had the designer, and the designer built the statue, or had the idea of the statue. And then when we chose not to go through the statue, we went with a more local point of view, and that's what we really settled on. And the person who assisted us was really the Presidio Trust, and they were really extraordinarily helpful. So, and it was a joint effort. So everybody really got together to accomplish it, and we were surprised that we didn't have more assistance by the other branches of the service. But the other branches of the service don't see it from the same point of view that the Marines did. So when you look at it from that point of view, you can it's a different framework, different setting, different.
Yes, but yeah, I see your point. You think the Army and Navy and everything would want to have a more.
Well, yeah. Well, the Navy sort of were parts of it, and Admiral Gorman left money for it, and he left $200,000, and there was a lot of Navy support, you know. But the main thrust behind it was the Marines. We did it. We did it.
And it took how long? From your first idea to the actual ribbon cutting?
Yeah, probably. Well, I think we finally commissioned it in 2016. So it took us seven years. You know, but now we're celebrating 10 years from the very beginning. But it's really wonderful to have it come into reality. And during the building of it, something that I didn't expect, and that was an absence of protest. I expected somebody to say, so, you know, hey, what are you doing? You know, but fortunately, we went through building it and everything else without anybody complaining. So.
In San Francisco, no less.
Oh, yeah.
Take 60
Maybe in
seconds
Berkeley.
and just tell us about Manjay and what he did.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, thank you, Don.
Oh, yeah. I'll say this. Manjay is an extraordinarily talented man, and he's filled with nothing but worthy ideals. And he gives unselfishly, and in order to accomplish things that are really worthwhile. I have high admiration for that man. He really does a fine job. He has been committed, you know, throughout, and it was necessary for him to be a part of this whole thing, because he brought in that element from the representing the Korean community, and which was vital, you know, to the success. And in terms of the total amount of money that was contributed, 52% of the money came from the Koreans, and that shows you. And they're not located.
Grateful, huh?
Well, many of the money that came from local Koreans.
Yeah.
And so.
Not just the government, right.
Right. Well, but that major part of it came from them. But Manjay Kim, he gave I don't know whether I should say this or not, but I will. He contributed and bought a bench, but it's anonymous, So he's not identified, and
That's the contributor, huh?
well, when you go through there, you don't see his name, but believe me, he was a factor throughout, big factor.
He's kind of modest, huh?
I don't know whether it's modesty. I wouldn't describe him as being modest.
I say the word is just classy guy.
Yeah, he is. He is. He is. He just knows how to do it. And
Exactly.
and
Don, I think we have like at least another half an hour before we should run home to beat the traffic.
yeah,
So, what areas haven't we covered, Denise? Have we covered all the business yet? Probably not.
no. What I'd like to talk about is
Thank you, Don.
no. I'd like to talk about the my time at Wells Fargo in a business capacity, and I think that this is worthy of some comment. And I said earlier that I joined Wells Fargo in '73, and I was with Wells Fargo throughout the period where they had extremely positive earnings improvements and expansion. And the bank was tremendously successful in acquiring other banks in the area, and we had nothing but success. And I reported. I was the chief compliance officer of the bank, given the fact that I had all the regulatory background and such, and that was not present at the bank. And as a matter of fact, the whole idea of persons who are serving as bank counsel take a position where they are doing what they're being asked to do, and their legal responsibility is, without question, their loyalty is to their client, and they're not in a position where they're judging each of these questions to be answered with an idea of anyone other than protecting the client. So when you look at it from that point of view, you can understand where the people at the bank, when they're looking to the legal department, they're looking for reinforcement of their position and their position in defense of what they're doing. And my position was somewhat different. What my position was, there should be a sense of obligation on the part of the bank to not only meet the interests of the management of the company, but also what the bank's responsibilities are to the general public, to the customers, to the employees, and those kinds of responsibilities should be taken into consideration when you're making decisions with regard to just basically protecting the bank from making the decisions. And I was in situations where I was told that they would like an outcome to be, and then we're asking you to write an opinion in support of that position. And that represents, what a legal opinion, but how really is that to be found, to be the best way to run a business? And I was with the bank for almost 20 years, and I continued to be involved in a great many situations involving very, very important decisions which were being made, and I always I would find myself very much opposed to some of those positions that had been taken, and it got to the point where I really left the bank under those lack of agreement on generally ways of doing business. And the outcome was I left the bank, but I left it under positive circumstances, positive in the sense that, you know, I was given all of these different benefits, and medical benefits, and all the rest of these things. So I have no complaint from that point of view, but I do look back upon what happened, because when I left, there was nobody there to say, no, don't do this. You know, only do what's in your best interest. And what it was thereafter that the bank got into terrible, terrible trouble. And millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars were wasted and lost as a result of all of this. Last month, this month, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, my employer at one time, they fined Wells Fargo Bank officers over $60 million. It's extraordinary, but
Wow, but they're still cleaning it up, huh?
yeah. Oh no, they're gonna be involved in it for a long time, and just changing the whole nature of it. It's really very, very unfortunate. But while I was at Wells Fargo, you know, I wrote their Code of Corporate Responsibility, their Code of Ethics, and I did all of those kinds of things. I led a national community organization in putting together a national code for banks, and we were quite successful in doing a great many things falling into that category of good control over activity of the banks, and really, so from that point of view, it was immensely successful. I left there, and I joined Sumitomo Bank, and Sumitomo Bank was a smaller California bank, but it was the first Japanese bank to be in the United States, and it had quite a fine record in terms of being run well, but where they didn't excel, in understanding and appreciating and fully complying with all of the laws relating to community relations and that kind of thing. So they really didn't have any real openness to change their way of doing business. And there had to be a real change in terms of attitude. And so when I joined Sumitomo, they were really in need of a real change in the way they're doing business.
Were they resistant?
Pardon me?
Were they resistant to you?
Well, they had been resistant to a couple of predecessors, but I don't think that anyone really fell into the same category. But when I went in, I went in with the idea that they were in need of change, and I fell into conversation immediately, and I was hired by the president of the bank, and I I said to him, you know, that at the very beginning, that what we were going to have to do is change the way we're doing business, and we're going to have to change the whole idea of success in their eyes, and not being the number one. Although that's laudable, it's not going to win over the affirmative disposition of the regulatory authorities. And so we're going to have to change the way we're doing business. And the president of the bank said, okay, and he gave me the best person on his staff that in the bank who was conversant in Japanese and in English, and she was really an extraordinarily accomplished individual. So we went about, you know, changing the bank, and we changed it, and we changed it mightily, and we got off the list, you know, that we had been on, and as a matter of fact, we won different awards, you know, for community service and the like, and we really did extraordinarily well, and over those years that I was with that bank, and I'd like to call your attention to this, what happened as a result of the president of the bank left San Francisco, and he went back over. He returned to Japan at Sumitomo, and he wrote me a letter after he had served, after he departed, and he said, you know, dear Mr. Reid, he says, after 2 months have passed since I came back to Japan, I am writing to thank you for your kind support for me during my stay in California. It is hard to believe that those years have passed since you joined Sumitomo. For me, these years have been most enjoyable and rewarding, especially with the many challenges that we faced in the banking industry in California. I was so lucky to have your strong support during these years. I am so much impressed by the fact that you have achieved so great a job as a bridge builder between American corporate culture and Japanese corporate culture. You've always made it quite appropriate to give advice and suggestions to me whenever I needed guidance to make important decisions. You are not only the Chief Compliance Officer, but the most valuable member of the management and loan committees. I can heartily and proudly declare that the samurai spirit and the Marine spirit work together quite beautifully at Sumitomo Bank. Now that all of our problem assets are gone, I am sure that we can expect to see our bank as an outstanding American bank with Japanese origins in the very near future. Thank you so very much for your warm support, and my heartfelt good wishes are with you and Helen for your happiness and good health. Sincerely yours, Tadaichi Ikigawa, President.
I think he liked you.
Can you believe it?
Wow, no, that's awesome.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
I never saw the likes of that.
You must have done good.
It worked out.
Yeah,
So
really good.
it really did. It worked out beautifully. So, but then what happened is the bank had to leave because they rearranged the whole of Sumitomo. And Sumitomo was very sad to have to sell. You know, they considered this bank to be really a jewel. And so, and I went back to Japan several times with Sumitomo, and I had nothing but very, very favorable relations with the Japanese banking industry. But it was really extraordinary because this even goes back to when I was with Wells Fargo, and I would be giving different lessons to international banks, and we would invite them to join us. And I remember going to the penthouse and a board of directors room and addressing these international bankers on the complexity of all of these laws about the necessity of owning and knowing your customer and all these other kinds of things. And I recall one time we had invited these Japanese bankers, and I went on and I explained at great length exactly how our system works and how we were able to achieve high compliance ratios and all of this. And then after the presentation, they said they were confused with this whole idea about knowing your customer, when in fact they know their customers very well. They know who the evildoers are, and they already have identified those evildoers. Everybody knows the Yamaza, all of those people in the Japanese society. They're known. So it's not the same problem.
Apparently not.
It was altogether different for them. So,
Wow.
but it worked out for us.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. It seems like you had quite a successful career.
Yeah, so it really was really splendid, and I think that covers pretty much the banking. I think when I came here to the summit, there were periods where we were really in need of revamping and sorting out exactly what path we ought to take in terms of the management of the summit and the like. So we had to take a lot of measures, and we had been exceedingly conservative in running the building, and we limited the amount of maintenance fees so that we're not putting the money back into the property and doing all the kinds of things that were necessary to be done. So for many years, what we did is we accumulated money. We redid, the positions of the building with regard to renovation, remodeling, and the like, and we've really achieved wonderful things. And as you can see, in that entry is just absolutely beautiful, and we just completed that recently. And
Looks like they're still doing some kind of work down there, though.
yeah. Well, we're doing a lot of things, and we're just completing all these balconies throughout the whole of the building. But all of these steps have been most favorable for the homeowners and for the building as a whole. So it's been tremendously successful, and but it had gone through a long period of time when, in fact, there really had been neglect because the different hallways were being done by the people who lived in the units on that floor. They would redesign each of the floors, but it took years to change all of that.
Yeah, like each floor had its own theme or something.
Yeah. So we had to go back and change.
A little more uniform.
Yeah. So now it's all done.
Yeah.
It's done in marine style. So
There you go.
so everything's very, very positive. So I'm very, very proud of the
Is that
progress.
So you're the president of the homeowners for this building?
Yes.
Okay, and so what are your duties besides kind of the maintenance stuff? Do you have other duties?
No, no, that's pretty much it. We hire a manager now, and
I mean, like if tenants are having problems with each other?
well, we settled all of that at the board level, but management really does a very superior job, and it's really a fine management company that we've been able to secure.
They were very kind to us downstairs, and so they treated us great there, so your staff seemed great. Now, I don't want to take you off track of what you want to talk about, but I do want you to talk about your swimming, please, and then a little bit more about your wife. And heck, we can come back and maybe I can come back sometime and bring my camera. So
Yeah.
thanks, Don. Keep going. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll say something about the about. I was always inclined to stay fit, and I think that's based upon being in the Marine Corps. And so when I came here to San Francisco, I had already been running for years back on the East Coast, and it started when I was probably out on the West Coast and the Washington area. But that was those were in the years when running was not that popular. But when I came to San Francisco, I continued to run, but I didn't have a great interest in swimming, although I had been a swimmer in my youth. I never was a very accomplished swimmer. I could stay in the water long periods of time, but that was for the reason I had the guts to do it. But it wasn't for the reason that I was able to swim with any great proficiency. But I did have the opportunity to join a club, a running club, and that was connected with the Dolphin Club. And I then learned through the running club, the Dolphin Running Club, about they were going to have a swim from Alcatraz, and called the Escape from Alcatraz. And I said, well, I would start swimming, and I got connected and started to swim.
You didn't swim, you didn't really know how to swim before that?
Oh no, I swam, from my youth. I used to swim in Atlantic City and Chicago. Chicago River. I always swam, but I never just swam tremendously well. But when I joined the Dolphin Club, I became efficient in staying in the water for longer periods of time. But the real secret is being able to endure that cold, and so it's cold. And but I was able to do that, and I continued to do it until a couple of years ago when I stopped going in regularly. But I at one time I was going in every day, and swimming at least a half mile every day. But and I've swum all of the swims in that the Dolphin Club has, and I have included the swim from Alcatraz, the Escape from Alcatraz, which I've done probably 8 times, I think. And but that involves the swimming from Alcatraz here to the to Aquatic Park, and then getting on a bicycle and traveling over to Mill Valley out by bike over the Golden Gate Bridge, and then doing the double dipsy, or the dipsy. So going over to Simpson Beach and coming back, and that'll complete the Escape from Alcatraz. Now, what they've done is they've changed that course so it no longer involves going over the Golden Gate Bridge. And what we did is, we being the Dolphin Club, we lost our claim for that Escape from Alcatraz, and they adopted that name, but it's not the same course. we continue to have that same course, but we do it in a much more limited number of people participate because of its complexity, and it's really it couldn't be done with the hundreds of people, that are involved in it, the now national event that they have.
So Don, not too many of us are going to do Escape from Alcatraz, but so why don't you just take a second here and tell us how the day goes for you? Thank you.
Around here?
Yeah, take us through a day of doing the Escape from Alcatraz.
Oh boy. Well, gee, you'd have to get up very, very early. The earlier you get into the water, the more the easier it's going to be. It's calmer in the morning, and so that's why they start the event usually 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, and in order to do that, and the amount of time it takes to swim from Alcatraz is about an hour,
So you take
roughly.
the ferry over to Alcatraz?
Yeah, but it's not a ferry. It's just a regular boat.
Oh, okay. Oh, like a dolphin club.
Yeah,
boat, and you
yeah.
take it over there.
It's not a Dolphin Club boat, but we rent it out, and but there are only 40, 50 people are doing it on a regular basis. The Escape from Alcatraz that you now see on television and the like, that one is the swim from Alcatraz, but they land out there. You can see that point where the land goes out. There's a beach there, and that's where they swim to, rather than the aquatic part. And then they get on bikes, and then go out to Land's End and back, and then they do a 6-mile run at around Seacliff. So it's a much more abbreviated event than the Escape from Alcatraz that we used to do. So I'm not doing that today, but that's that event. And but that event would take, on average, about 5 hours. And but there are some individuals who are still at it 7 hours into the time.
So
So
you have to stop it. I mean, you have a limit, but you have to stop it after.
yeah. And well, the people who are doing it, they know their full dimensions. But we have different swims, and we have the Golden Gate, of course, and I've done that a dozen times. And we swim from the fort there over to Lime Rock. You can see that it's at the base of the North Tower. And so there are a couple times where I didn't make it.
Well, I'm trying to imagine. So you get up in the morning, off you go. Now, does your wife follow you out there and watch you, or does she go, "Bye, Don,
No.
see you later"? How does that work, Don?
No, she used to wear a fur coat and walk around the pier and see me in the water. So she loved that, So, and
So you take an hour then to swim from Alcatraz to the aquatic part, and then you hop on your bikes.
yeah,
Now, I want to hear about the Dipsy part, because that's quite a climb.
Yeah.
How does that go?
well, that's quite a challenge, and that's one hill after another, and it's 7.5 miles over to Simpson Beach, and then it's another 7.5 miles coming back, and that's an incredible journey. So,
When
my
you get to the beach, do you jump in the water to cool off, or you just turn around and go back, or how does that work at the beach?
you turn around and go back.
Okay.
You don't go into the water. You've already had enough water. But the average time in the Escape is around 5.5 hours, and I think my best time is around 6 hours. So
Did you ever place?
pardon me?
Did you ever place?
Do I have a?
Have you ever placed in any of those, first, second, third?
Oh no, not at all. I never won or came close to winning. So, but my accomplishment would be just completing it.
Completing it, yeah.
So
Yeah.
I never won, but it's great to compete, and I rejoice in participating. You know, I think it's great. And then we have the Fort Point swim, and we have a Christie Field swim, and we have a Fort Mason swim, and Pier 39 over here, and Pier 41, and then we have a Bay Bridge swim, where we get into the water at the Bay Bridge and swim over to Aquatic Park. So,
These are like kind of sprinkled throughout the year,
well, we have swims throughout the whole year.
And
Yeah.
where's your guys' home base?
Dolphin Club. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And it continues to flourish, and they're doing fine. They're doing well.
and do they do boating too, or just,
Pardon me?
do they do boating as well?
Oh yeah,
Okay, so
It's
there's
a-
a little sailing club too then.
yeah. That's why.
Out there, yeah.
Right. I've never been a real big rower, you know, but I took to rowing because of I can see how dedicated those individuals are who do that. It's really wonderful. But that boat that I built there, that's the fastest boat in the bay. You know, and it's the fastest because it's the lightest. It's made of the lightest wood, and as a result, it's 5 or 10 pounds less weight than comparable boats. Yeah, so and it's one of the most popular boats in the fleet that we have. But it's a wonderful boat to have named after me. So I rejoice in that.
So where did you learn your carpentry skills?
At my swimming school.
Your carpentry skills, you make clothes.
Oh no, I just sit there and applaud. I really don't know that much about making it, but I learned a great deal, you know, seeing, you know, what they did, and it took us 2 years to build it. Well, you can see
Hand built, yeah.
everything is really
Yeah.
beautifully done, and it's all done. Well, it's done from a place. They have a special area where in the forestry area, and they've identified a group of trees that they use as the base, and that's what gives them access to these beautiful trees and the beautiful timber, you know, that they come across. So it's really wonderful, you know, what they've been able to accomplish over the years. Really a wonderful achievement, having all of those beautiful boats, and it's a real wonderful thing for the city, but the city doesn't really recognize it that much.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Good. I guess Don wanted you to talk more about your wife.
Oh, yeah, be my great pleasure. She was an extraordinarily accomplished lady, and she was born in. I used to ask people where they think my wife was born, and I say Hong Kong, Seoul, or Wyoming, and they would say, oh, Hong Kong or Seoul, and she was born in Wyoming. She was born in a town that no longer exists, as a ghost town, but that's where her father was. No, he was a miner, in a coal miner, and but then he left that town, and then he went to Montana, and then he eventually went to Oregon, and he was in Oregon where he became very, very successful in running a ranch and farm, and he was extraordinarily successful. He had 8 because the one child passed away at birth. But had 7 children, and 2 boys and 5 girls, and my wife was probably number 3, and then after she graduated from high school up in Oregon, and that was following the Second World War and during the Korean War, and the period was, no women were in business, and to think that a woman was going to be in business was unusual, but then to be in charge of the business was really extraordinary. So she did that, and she was really extraordinarily successful. And she started out as just a hairdresser, and she was going to school at the same time, and she was located down near the St. Francis Hotel, and that's where she got her principal start. But then she had famous clientele who frequented her beauty salon, and including Diane Feinstein, Barbara Boxer, all of these individuals of great, Marilyn Monroe, and it just.
Did Marilyn there?
Oh yeah, well, she was a close friend of Marilyn Monroe, and Marilyn.
Devastated when she died. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but that she left. Marilyn Monroe left when she no longer was married to Joe DiMaggio. So there were a number of years there that passed by that they were not together, but they were close, and she would spend the better parts of a day, at the salon, and so she was very, very, very successful. And then when we got married, she got all of the business from the Marines Memorial Club, which was just a block, down the street. So they loved doing business with her. So it was really a tremendous success that she was able to achieve, through that. And she was loved by the people at the Marines Memorial Club. So that was really wonderful. And she raised her family, and she was quite devoted. And and when I met her, really met her, and she was taking care of her grandchildren, and they were 4 or 5 years old at the time, and that's when I got married to her, and then we spent 30 years together, but and we raised the grandchildren, and they've both graduated from college. But I recall the one situation involving Natalie. She's the eldest of the 2 children. Phil is the second child, but she was given the opportunity to. Natalie was given the opportunity to apply to local schools, and there was no doubt she was going to go to college, and but then she applied to USF, and I've served on the board of USF, so when she was denied admittance into USF, I called Father Schlegel, the president, and he said, well, no, she can go to the school, but and then when I spoke to them again, he said, well, she's going to be on probation, and I said to Natalie, I said, Natalie, we're not going to be on probation. I said, but why don't we go back to St. John's, for a year? So she went back to St. John's, and and she did fine. And then the next year she was admitted to USF, where she later graduated from. That was extraordinary, to find out about.
What did she major in?
Well, she majored in arts and sciences, and she was and she's in business now, but it was in business that she went into. Yeah. But I I had the opportunity to join with a Marine, a very famous Marine here in the Bay Area, Hank Morris, and he was the grandson of Angelo Rossi, and Angelo Rossi was one of our fine mayors, and he was the mayor during the Second World War, and he was the mayor when they opened the Golden Gate Bridge, so and he was an outstanding individual, but the Hank Morris was close to a priest at the University of San Francisco, and Hank Morris and I were close friends. So the three of us got together, and we started a school, a graduate school at the University of San Francisco, with the approval of the then Chancellor of the University, Father Los Galvo, and we started that university, and I think this year we're going to be graduating 27 graduate students in Asian studies, and 17 of them are from Korea, and we have these kids coming over, and we've provided scholarship aid and assistance to them over the years. And I think that's the whole secret, enabling kids to get a leg up. I think it's ruinous what we're doing with this student aid and all of these loans, student debt and everything. I think that's criminal, what's happening there. And we're fashioning a whole few generations of people, who are oh yeah. It's incredible. And I just did everything in order to stay away from debt. Debt is that'll pummel you. It's the worst thing in the world that you can do is to get in debt. Yeah. So, is there anything else that I should touch upon?
I think we're going to come back and maybe interview you more about your combat or whatever you might want to talk about, and I can maybe scan in some of your photos that you'd like for the back of your book. So Denise, we probably should go home with the kids and all right. We'll take this part out.
Yeah.
So maybe we can go ahead and...
We'll give you a break for now.
Why don't you tell us, though, anything you want to about... you kind of talked about this a little bit, about your feelings about war and everything, but did you touch on Trump a little bit?
Yeah.
President Trump?
Yeah. One
more time, though, tell us why you like President Trump and any kind of political things you want to say about San Francisco or...
I don't know whether...
You actually know Democrats and Republicans, right? So you know the big shots. What do you think about the whole... Tell me about politics, Don.
Well, these are not popular points of view that you're going to hear me profess. But
this will just be for you and your family this part.
Oh, yeah, good. Well, I was raised very much with a Democrat influence, and my mother was a committed Democrat. Of course, she was at the time, and she lived through the Great Depression, and she knew exactly what Depression means and what it represents. And so I was raised with that influence, and my sister was of the same persuasion, and I was to a certain extent. But when I was in the Marine Corps, I recognized the fact that I was really in the minority, because in the Marine Corps, they're all very, very conservative individuals. And so I didn't find great favor in my brethren, and but that didn't hold me up. I still professed to a lesser extent than vocal support for the Democrats, and during college, and probably probably in law school, I was moving towards a more conservative point of view, and by the time I was through law school, there was absolutely no doubt, that I was not going to be a Democrat for the reason that I saw Democrats as being the people who were just at the other end of the spectrum in terms of conscientious work ethic and all the rest of it. And for that reason, I became a Republican. And I saw that there's really a benefit in terms of seeking, to excel, seeking to apply your energies and make something of yourself and to improve life around you. And you're going to be able to do that far, far easier being a Republican than a Democrat. So there was no doubt. When I came here to San Francisco, the Republicans were really at a very, very small number. And I did, become involved in politics, and I became friendly with then Mayor. Well, she was not even mayor at the time, when she was in the house of the local house, and that's when I met her, and but she's always been conservative. I don't think she finds very much in the way of open, support for Donald Trump. But she early on indicated favor for him, and to think in terms of more acceptance on the part of the Democrats of certain ideas that he's professing, and that was not widely accepted by everyone. So she stepped back from those comments that she made early on, for the reason that all the Democrats were so opposed to him, and that's a shame, because I do think that he's really a very, very committed individual, and I don't see where he's taking advantage of the situation, whereas others, I can see that they are, and I have high admiration for Donald Trump, and I thought he was really doing this splendid when he had General Kelly in there and General Mattis, but I can understand why they don't fit in all the time. It's necessary to have Marines present when you have a destination and an objective in view, and you want that accomplished, and they'll do that, be assured. But for them to be sitting back in the trenches not doing anything, that's not their style. So for that reason, there's a change. But I have the highest admiration for Donald Trump and what he's doing, and I think what he hope, and I hope he does this soon, is I hope he pays attention to the need of the homeless in this country. It's just the most pitiful thing I can imagine, that all of these people, but what it represents is an absolute total disregard for what is needed. And what is needed is there has to be some firm discipline introduced in order to supervise these wayward individuals. When we closed those insane asylums, that was not a public service. That was just not right. And we left all of those people to to be on their own, and they're not able to take care of
Well, we
themselves.
just lined up from here. Took the train up to Sacramento. They're just all along the right of way, all the way up to Sacramento. Well, I think 100% of Americans can agree on that. And I think 100% of Americans can agree President Trump keep going on that intellectual property with China.
Yeah,
I mean, there are points of agreement, Don, so
yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, it's been good talking with you, and yeah, I'll be pleased to respond to any questions that you may have. I think we're living in a fine world right now. I think we're in a far, far better position, than we were 4 years ago. And as a matter of fact, I think now what he's been able to do, take for example what happened last week or earlier this week in Wildwood, New Jersey. They had over 100,000 people show up for him to speak. And I think it's wonderful. I think it really is. Other people say he should hold himself back from making these tweets and this kind of thing.
Right.
Well, if he wants to make tweets, I would propose that he moderate them somewhat, but not altogether. I think sometimes it's needed. That's the only language that they're going to understand. So
Yes.
I think he's been absolutely splendid, and I think he's getting the people out, and that's it. He's not only getting the Democrats to flip over and become Republicans, but he's also getting the people who didn't vote out.
Exactly.
And those are the people that really were so needed. So I really think he's doing absolutely splendid, and what he's accomplishing. And can you imagine? Here's a man, that could be making, and he has made millions, and he does it with ease and with grace and with huge success. I think it's just wonderful.
Well, Don, I am so glad you shared that with me. We really needed to hear that. And one last thing before you go, though, I noticed your beautiful uniform there. What do you show us what your things are here? Your buttons or your
Yeah.
ribbons. Thank you.
Well, some of them are from the Korean government, and the one is the Korea Service Medal with the 3 battle stars, and the UN. This is the Korean Presidential Unit Citation. This is the Good Conduct Medal, and this is the Armed Forces during the Korean War. And this is a Korean decoration as well.
Yes. Okay, well, thanks, Don.
Oh, thank you.
Nice.
Yes. Well, very proud to have served in the Marine Corps and to be given the opportunity, to, that's the single most continuous organization of excellence. Every other thing that I've been associated with, I've had a sense of disappointment, which is not necessarily the fault of any identifiable person, but take for example the Catholic Church, and I've seen it succumb, and it's really poor, to recognize that it's foundering. And look, and they're advocating now, positions which are really not in the best interest of our country. They want more people to come into the country. They want more protection for the illegals, and really, they're taking positions which are not, completely right for our country. And the same is said with regard to the international position for our new pope. So it's regrettable that we're having this kind of thing. But the one thing that remains solid throughout all of this is the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps is so strong, and they're so.
haven't had any scandals, huh?
No, no. Well, there it used to be that you couldn't be divorced if you were in high office, but that pretty much continues to be the case. And so,
Well, let's leave it on that note. So I want you to say the Marine Corps motto to us on the camera. Just look straight in the camera, and then you can sign off here, Don. Thank you.
yes, indeed, it's my great pleasure, and I have two words to tell you: Semper Fidelis.
Okay. And then I'll have you hold this, Don.
Okay.
You know, I think I'll email you tonight, and I'll let you know how things turned out.
Okay.
But, perfect. Okay. And that'll be great. Thanks, Don.
You bet.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, well, we better pack up quick, 'cause,
Yes. No, I think you're on time. Yeah, you'll be able to beat a lot of the traffic. Yeah, I'll do it.
Yourself there.
Good.